So listen to this. The best right back in the world sucks at defending. Okay, wait a second. Something has gotta be wrong there. Why is a defender who cannot defend getting compliments from Cafu? I mean, that guy definitely knows a thing or two about defending. But well, as he explained, they used to say the same about Roberto Carlos and me, but I think we won a few things. And what's funny is, so has Trent Alexander Arnold, but for some reason it seems UEFA likes him more than his own country does. Why does England hate Alexander Arnold? Why do Walker, Trippier and Reece James get more hype than him? I've seen people rate Matty Cash over him. That cannot come from any sort of rational standpoint. Do you realize that it's been 7 years since he debuted for England, and the most action Southgate ever gave him was 6 minutes in a Euro quarter-final versus Switzerland playing in midfield? In any other country, you'd be the first name on a list, but instead, they're wasting their time arguing that the only thing he can do is cross. Man, it's not as simple as saying that he can cross. You've got a guy who can bend it like Beckham, who can go toe-to-toe with any player aside from maybe Kevin De Bruyne when it comes to stacking up assists, who's on a whole different world creatively from any other defender you've seen in the Premier League, and you want to turn the best right back in the world into a midfielder. That makes no sense, and I'm not the one saying it. That's a direct quote from Jurgen Klopp, who I'm sure we can all agree knows it better than any of us. The problem is that people don't like change, and Alexander Arnold has been on a run that may change football forever. Because, let's play devil's advocate, this kid knew virtually nothing about playing right back when he was first brought into the first team. Look, first of all, Trent only made it to Liverpool's academy because one day his teacher came into the classroom asking wanted to go on a sort of summer camp the club was setting up. And well, that was the same year that Trent watched his heroes drive by his house on an open-top bus, having just won the Champions League. So every kid raised their hands begging to go and forcing the teacher to pull their names out of a hat completely at random. Had his name not been picked, who knows where he'd be now? As he said, I didn't know it then, but it was the luckiest day of my life. Even further, that was never meant to be some scouting opportunity, but somehow one coach felt he saw something in him, got the club to sign him up, and right there, the question started. For the first years, it was normal. Kids are not exactly known for their tactical prowess, but for Trent, that never changed. He started as a winger. At 12, he morphed into a center-back. Over the next few years, he played for 3 Sunday League teams at the same time, and in each one, he played a different role. Then, Pep Lijnders arrived as an academy coach at Liverpool and had him play as a defensive midfielder. It was absolute chaos, enough to send any teenager into an existential crisis, but for Trent, it seemed to make no difference. By the age of 15, Gerrard came in to assist in their training sessions as he prepared to get his coaching license, and was so impressed by Trent that when he sat down to write his own autobiography, he dedicated a whole paragraph to tell the world about this Scouser kid with a terrific chance of making it to the very top. A kid so versatile, he can play anywhere on the pitch. Yes, Gerrard was ahead of his time, but not as much as you may imagine. Only a few months later, Brendan Rodgers quietly brought in Trent for a friendly against Swindon Town. It barely even made the newspapers, but for a 16-year-old that had never even played for their under-23s, that meant a lot. So when a couple more months later, Rodgers was sacked and replaced by Klopp, who brought in Lijnders as his second coach, Trent saw his chance, and he took it. Having developed a special relationship with Lijnders ever since he had taken him under his wing as his star pupil, Trent knew he could open some doors for him, and since, after all, he could seemingly morph into whatever role was needed at the flip of a switch, he met with the academy directors and straight up asked, "What is the fastest route for me to get into the first team?" And after hearing that there was really only one player putting up a fight for the right back spot, Trent set his eyes on Nathaniel Clyne and kept pushing. By the start of the next season, Lijnders had convinced Klopp to bring in the kid for their preseason tour before hitting the transfer market in search of a new right back, and fast forward to deadline day, they had decided not to sign anyone. So by the first round of the League Cup, Trent was brought in against Tottenham and instantly made it into the team of the week. By the next round, he assisted Origi for the opening goal and took the man of the match, and after going off the radar for a couple months, Klopp took the team for a walk 3 hours before their kickoff against United, brought Trent to the side and told him, "Clyne has got a problem. Are you ready?" and from that day, nothing was ever the same. 4 months later, Trent was already Liverpool's Young Player of the Year. By summer, he had chosen to skip out on the Under-19 Euros in order to better prepare for the next season, and though that meant watching from home as his teammates took the trophy without him, there were no regrets, because then that same Nathaniel Clyne went out with a back injury. He was out for 258 days. Suddenly, with the biggest criticism of Liverpool that year being that they lacked a world-class playmaker, and Alexander Arnold being left with no real threat among the squad, aside from Joe Gomez, who could technically fill that role if needed, they pretty much gave an 18-year-old license to revolutionize what anyone thought a right back could even do. 2 games in, Klopp was already forcing Trent to take a decisive free kick in the Champions League playoffs that would put them with 1 foot in the group stage, after missing out on it for 6 of the previous 7 seasons. By October, he was scoring again as Liverpool took the largest Champions League win by any English club ever. By the turn of the year, he was rejecting the under-21s in order to join England's first team in training, and though by March, he'd be getting dragged on TV with every pundit claiming that he had been rushed into the first team following a humiliating performance against Marcus Rashford. He just went back to talk to his academy coaches, asked them what he needed to do to make sure that never happened again, and 2 weeks later, as he lined up against Manchester City as the youngest ever Englishman to start in the Champions League quarter-finals, with everyone expecting Sané to embarrass Trent even further, with Pep Guardiola going as far as setting up his tactics to target his side of the pitch, expecting him to buckle. Instead, Trent locked him down so hard, he ended up taking the Man of the Match award, then running it back in the second leg to put Liverpool in the semis for the first time in a decade. And after getting past Roma, Alexander Arnold, who just a year before was getting adjusted to training with the first team, was now about to be tasked with man-marking Cristiano Ronaldo in a Champions League final. And the truth is that he did good, but you know what happened? All Karius had to do was pick up the ball and roll it to Trent. Instead, he gifted Real Madrid the Champions League trophy. It all went down so horribly that when the final whistle was sounded, Trent didn't even bother asking any of the all-time greats around him for their shirts. He just walked off the pitch. However, that day may have been a blessing in disguise, because it showed him that there was no other option but to get better and get back there the following year. After finishing second at the Golden Boy Award and being called up to the World Cup before he was even able to make his first appearance for England, the 19-year-old showed back up for his 3rd season and bet left-back Andy Robertson that he could get more assists than him. No money riding on it, just pride. However, by the end of February, Robertson was on 7, but Trent was still stuck at 2, and that must have hurt his ego or something, because the next game, Trent became the youngest ever player to get 3 assists in a single match. The only problem was that Robertson got 2 as well, but regardless, a week later it clicked. Trent got another assist against Southampton, then 1 more the very next game in the UCL quarterfinals, another in that second leg, and then 1 in each of the next 2 Premier League matches. But suddenly, Robertson had equaled the all-time Premier League assists record for a defender, so with that, plus the fact Trent was strangely dropped to the bench as his teammates succumbed 3-0 to Barcelona, while in the league, they were within inches of leapfrogging City to the title with 2 league matches remaining, they got him so fired up that he came in against Newcastle and got 2 more assists, not just clutching their win, but tying Robertson for that record, making them the only ever defending duo to hit double figures for assists in the same season, and being named by the CIES as the most valuable defender on the planet. So then, his only focus was welcoming Barcelona into Anfield and giving them hell. Salah was injured, so was Firmino, then Robertson went out as well. It should have been impossible. But with a 1-0 advantage at halftime, Wijnaldum came in to make it 3-3, and with 11 minutes to go, through sheer instinct, Trent realized their whole defense was off guard, took his corner as quickly as he could, and secured their place in the Champions League final in the most dramatic fashion ever seen in football. closing out the greatest night in the history of Anfield and hopefully proving to every doubter that, as much as defensively he could at times be a liability, he greatly made up for it with every other aspect of his game, though really, it wouldn't be quite as easy. No matter how much praise he got over the following weekends, quickly getting one final assist to win their bet and snatch the record out of Robertson's hands, not to mention that days later, instead of being the kid waiting to get a glimpse at the Liverpool bus, he'd be the one on it, having just won the Champions League title, making it into the UEFA Team of the Season, and becoming the youngest footballer in history to be present in 2 consecutive finals, all while domestically, even though Liverpool would lose out on the league title regardless, it would be by a single point, totaling an astonishing 97 that would have been enough to secure them the title in every Premier League season, except for that one and the one before it, which to Trent, again, meant somehow going even harder and hunting it down. By the start of that season, you already had headlines declaring this 21-year-old as one of the best playmakers in the world, an era-defining talent, the new Steven Gerrard, which, ironically, only further fed the narrative that he should be turned into a midfielder, as Gerrard himself had started off at right back, but regardless, for a while, there was nothing anyone could say. By starting the season with an assist on opening day, he became the first player since 2015 to get an assist in 5 consecutive league matches. A week later, he had taken the European Super Cup. A month after that, he got the league's goal of the month. By the end of the year, he had become the first defender in 13 years to be named Premier League Player of the Month. He had been nominated to the Ballon d'Or as the highest ranked fullback on the planet. Liverpool were world champions, and then, well, he kept stacking up assists until in February he helped Liverpool extend their unbeaten run to 44 matches, getting 2 assists against West Ham that allowed him to match his own tally from the previous season, just as the quarantine started, eventually coming back and adding one more just to break the record again and make Liverpool English champions for the first time in 30 years, taking the Premier League's Young Player of the Season award as he placed second in the assist charts, only behind Kevin De Bruyne, and made sure that, in order to complete club football, all that was left were the 2 cup titles, though things would look very different very soon. After starting out his season by becoming the youngest to ever captain Liverpool in the Champions League and leading them to the top of the league by Christmas, things seemed fine, aside from that disastrous 7-2 defeat to Aston Villa. But then, with Van Dijk, Joe Gomez, Thiago and Jota out injured and positive COVID tests constantly disrupting their lineups, it all burnt down in a second. Just 3 wins over the next 14 matches with only 9 goals scored, as even Trent went completely missing. Suddenly, they were closer to relegation than the top. Trent was getting bullied by Vini and Rodrigo in the Champions League, and Southgate was outright leaving him out of his call-up to the World Cup qualifiers, sparking more discussion than ever around his name, only for him to show back up over the final 2 months of the season, leading Liverpool on another unbeaten run that even saw them beat United at Old Trafford for the first time in 7 years, narrowly securing them a spot in the Champions League after one of the most astonishing dips in form I've ever seen, only for Southgate to leave him out of the Euro squad no matter what, bringing Trippier, Reece James and Kyle Walker as many once again justify that call on the basis that Trent was just not good enough defensively, even though that season he ranked above every single one of those players for tackle success and ball recoveries, also being the one who got dribbled past the least, not to mention that obviously he demolished every single one in any creative stat you can think of. But even then, what annoyed Klopp the most wasn't that they didn't call him up, though he did make it very public that he didn't see how any manager in his right mind could do that. No, what annoyed them was the constant insistence by some pundits that perhaps Trent would be more suited to a midfield role, to which he dropped the iconic quote, "Why would I make the best right back in the world a midfielder?" And let me just say, Klopp couldn't have been proven right any quicker, with Trent going into the season with a run of 14 assists in 18 matches, which is unimaginable even for some of the greatest wingers and creative midfielders on the planet, then quickly securing both the League Cup and FA Cup trophies, filling out the 2 remaining holes in his resume, and completing club football at 23 years of age, the youngest player to achieve that in the history of the Premier League. Matter of fact, only 5 had ever done it, and the worst is that at that point, Liverpool were 1 point off the top with 1 match left, and in the Champions League final. They were 2 matches off of a never-before-seen quadruple, but though Man City went 2 goals down 76 minutes into the final match day, they came back to win it. And though Liverpool demolished Real in the UCL final with 24 shots to just 4, they lost 1-0. It might have felt awful to fall short of something so historic, but regardless, Trent had hit 12 assists once more, meaning that he was now the holder of the 3 highest assist tallies out of any defender in the history of the league. This time, just 1 short of topping the charts, and he was, again, nominated for the Ballon d'Or. So, as The Guardian wrote, not bad for a 4th choice right back. Regardless, the ups and downs weren't over. In his 7th season, it seemed with every week that went by a new match was labeled the worst under Klopp, and of course the scapegoats had already been chosen years before. Every night the pundits were on TV blaming Alexander Arnold and ignoring the fact that midway through the season, 21 of the team's 36 players had already gone out injured. It got so bad that even though this time Southgate did call him up, Trent barely got any game time at the World Cup. But in the end, the man they were blaming turned out to be Liverpool's savior. With 10 matches left in the season, realizing that this weakened squad just wasn't able to provide Trent with the kind of situations that he thrived in, Klopp flipped his whole system so that he could take on a new role as an inverted fullback, allowing him to explore the half spaces when in possession, opening up a whole new world of playmaking opportunities. And Trent's stats blew up tenfold overnight, matching his record run and becoming the only ever player to get 5 assists in 5 consecutive matches, twice, 8 goal contributions in those final 10, 153 touches against Leeds, the 2nd most out of any player in the league over that season, all while still remaining a fullback. It was the best of both worlds. Klopp had managed to give the critics what they wanted while remaining true to his philosophy, and it was the start of something great. By December of the next year, Liverpool had won more points than any other team in the league ever since their tactical switch. Trent had been promoted to vice-captain, but then he was hit with a problem that he had never really had before, tearing the ligaments of his knee and missing out on most of the second half of the season, precisely as Klopp announced that he'd be stepping down at the end of the year. After this, it was quite clear that Trent's career was at a crossroads. Whatever big decisions he was planning on making, this was the right time for them, meaning that when he was asked about his future and went on about how he wants to try to become the 4th defender to win the Ballon d'Or, to become legendary, but all without mentioning Liverpool, everyone realized that something was wrong, since he only had 1 more year in his contract and Real Madrid were reportedly planning an approach. And ever since then, reports have only gotten worse, as Trent has bounced back from yet again being outcasted by Southgate at the Euros to now becoming one of the centerpieces of Arne Slot's Liverpool, becoming the all-time leading assist provider across any defender in Premier League history before he had even turned 26. And today, already topping the league with an absurd margin, having also led a Champions League stable, it's looking like Trent could have the perfect goodbye.